So, welcome everyone. It looks like we have a critical swell of people here. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Malia. I'm the executive director of Artwell. I have had the joy and the privilege of being with this organization for about 3.5 years now, um, succeeding the founding executive director, Susan Teigen, and overseeing a wonderful period of growth, evolution, and transformation. In that time, I'm joined here by my young protege, Leo, who's home from school, my son. So you may see a head bobble in and out here. But we're really excited to host our third annual learning session. You can move on to the next slide. Just to give you an overview of what we'll do here, we will provide just an overview of Artwell and where we are in 2026. We are joined by two esteemed speakers and community builders. First is Blue Kind, who will be giving a perspective from the teaching artist's point of view. And we're also joined by our feature speaker, Dr. Monique Liston, who is the founder and chief strategist, of Ubuntu Research and Evaluation. We'll leave some time at the very end for reflections and questions, and I urge everyone to use the chat feature so that if you have, feedback or a question, we can refer to it in the body of the chat. And then we'll end with some ways that you can stay in touch with us over the course of the rest of this school year. So it's an exciting time. Artwell was founded in 2000, and we're celebrating 25 years of art, artistic expression, community building in the city of Philadelphia. So, this year, more so than others, is one that is celebratory and one that is really focused on our impact and where we've come and where we want to go. So, a little bit about us. We share some of these statistics every year. One of the things that we want to highlight about our learners is that 90% of the youth that we serve identify as Black, Latinx, Asian, specifically Southeast Asian, Indigenous, Native Hawaiian. And this is important because we know that students who come from these demographics often have less resources in schools and in their communities. And so, what Artwell does is partner with schools and partner with communities and partner with classroom teachers to ensure that we are increasing access to all the benefits of art and the art making process. Tiffany, I see your note. Give me 1 second. Um, and so a little bit about our reach. We are serving over 1,000 young people in the city of Philadelphia this year. That number is inclusive of our summer programs. We serve about 300 students every summer, and that number is growing. And summer is a time where there is a huge need for enrichment and for things that connect young people to opportunities for social emotional growth and different tools to help them transition into the school year well. We're serving 15 zip codes. And of the 15 programmatic sites that we have, we are serving 12 school district of Philadelphia schools in addition to two nonprofit partnerships. And so, what we all came here for today is to unveil this new mission and vision statement that is the result of not just the last year of information gathering and active listening and creating feedback loops within our community, but also previous work that had been done over the last 6 years coming off of the pandemic to really understand what it is that Artwell does that distinguishes our work in the city of Philadelphia and how we are serving the community. Our new mission statement is Artwell creates supportive spaces where Philadelphia youth can engage in art making as a pathway to self-expression and wellness. And our vision is we envision a Philadelphia where schools and neighborhoods nurture creativity and integrate the arts as an essential means of learning, community building, and personal growth. The things that I want to point out about this evolution of our mission statement and vision statement is that it's exactly that. this is not a departure from what we've done. It is definitely an evolution and a period of growth. And this new mission and vision statement really reflects the work that we have been doing in a more concrete and clear way. One of the things that we are emphasizing as a community and as a learning organization is the idea of cultural humility. We are entering into spaces knowing that we can't solve every problem, knowing that we have to be a partner with our classroom teachers and with our students, and knowing that we are approaching the spaces that we are welcomed into with a sense of curiosity, being a curious tourist, if you will. And so, what we want to project as far as outcomes is that we know that there is documented research, longitudinal studies over years indicating that art supports social emotional growth, it supports wellness, and that there is an inherent value in self-expression, which is giving young people the tools to excavate their emotions and say what's on their hearts and minds. And so we're really excited about how this new mission and vision statement will anchor our work and help to lay a foundation for the path forward for years and years to come. And so, without further ado, we will introduce Blue Kind, who is our featured teaching artist, and I will um, introduce Enoch Church, who is our program director, who will be reading Blue's bio for us.
Hello, hello. Thank you to everybody who is attending, supporting, and also engaging in this communal learning with us. So, some things about Blue Kind. Inspired by her Afro-Indigenous lineage, Blue Kind creates transformational experiences where folks can connect deeper within themselves and each other toward their highest self. She offers moments of pause, conversation, and discovery where we can experience daily magic, being open to heal individually and collectively. Her play involves poetry, crafting, dance, and community space making. Blue studied theater at University of the Arts and is a lifelong student of African dance, diasporic storytelling, and living communally with the earth and each other. Blue is currently on the board of Philadelphia Legal Assistants, PLA for short, and Harriet's Book Club. She holds the 2022 PACDC Equitable Entrepreneur Award and nominee for Sustained PHL Social Impact in 2019 for her work with Franny Lou's Porch. Blue has been teaching independently since 2008 and with Artwell on and off since 2015. This year, she has residencies at Building 21 High School, Lankenau Environmental Science Magnet High School, and five other middle and elementary schools for March and April 2026. She also has been a selected poet through Healing Verse Germantown to have her poem as a public installation in March 2026. If y'all are not familiar with Healing Verse Germantown, please check it out. It's also something I had the privilege to be a part of. It's a really great resource ran by Tripita Mason. Blue Kind has developed multiple cultural community organizations in Philadelphia, including Franny Lou's Porch, Koku Roku Learning Cooperative, De Griot Cafe and Gallery, and Rad.Love, a nonprofit fiscally sponsored by the Painted Bride Arts Center to support community programming. Grateful to be involved in the good work, Blue also supports other Black, Brown, and community leaders on their journey through public speaking and coaching. So, with all that said, we will hand things over to Blue Khan.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was like, oh, what am I going to put in my bio? I'm so grateful for being here. Love Artwell, love the new mission and vision. Y'all are dope. Um, yes. So why I teach, growing up, I was not introduced to people who really look like me that were successful, creative, and impactful. So inspiring them with their collective story. Um, I had a lot of trauma in my teens and tweens, and I've always had an affinity towards these younger teenagers, really to help them support where they are coming from and to really see them where they are, and also be encouraging to kind of get through this season. And I feel a lot of freedom in poetry. I love poetry. I think and I breathe in poetry. I really see that it's a space where I'm most free, and I love to open up this opportunity for the youth to experience that sense of freedom in their writing and discover it as a place of freedom if they haven't known that before. I really have them explore their own thoughts and really create some magic on the page. And I love them to explore their own story and that they are enough and that their dreams and experiences and perspectives are true and real. But it first starts with just getting out of their head, you know, and we talk a lot about of that being like wellness for them to really fulfill the things that they want to do in their life, just get out of their head. I really do see a need for community because we are not alone, and I think to get together is our culture. I understand that there's a lot of isolation going on in our culture. It is wild, especially since 2020. When we are isolated, we are unable to be seen. We are unable to be seen and heard. And then we start dehumanizing ourselves and then we dehumanize others. And so I see community as a way of coming back to our center and homeostasis so we can actually see ourselves because we are creatures of reflection. So as I see you, I see me, and we see each other. And so I think it's a way of humanity. And I love this MLK quote, you know, all people are caught up in the inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be who I ought to be until you are who you ought to be. And you can never be who you ought to be until I am who I'm ought to be. And so I think community is just central for us to really become, you know, our highest self. You can go to the next slide. Yes. So building community in classrooms. This is a really cool activity we did around, you know, putting like affirmations of who we are and building a nice lanyard around the space and having like a threshold to come into a space, and they're really sweet. But the first thing that I do is I connect to the teacher prior or the administration, and I'll even research the school. And I really want to know what the climate of the classroom is before I get there. So how many students is, what's the demographic, what kind of teachers' thoughts are about their students? Like, is it a
Oh
negative
no,
perspective?
are we all experiencing a little?
Am I
Can we
glitching?
hear Blue? I think we may not be able to hear you.
There's a bit of delay.
It's fine on my end, Leah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good.
it's fine on my end also.
Yes.
Oh, great. Maybe I'm talking so fast. I need to chill. I need to chill. I'm excited. Okay. 'Cause this excites me and my vibration is affecting my computer. Um, so yes, I really want to know if there's any special needs that the students you need. And are having maybe some divergent, maybe there's high energy, you know, all these like terms of how can I come in with tools and perspectives to support the youth right when I get there? How can I meet them one-on-one? How is the room set up? What is the tech needs of the space? Can I play music? You know, what can I bring? And that usually helps kind of preface our time together. And when I get there, we use that first session really to really spend time on introductions to get to know the students and for them to get to know me or us if I'm teaching with, you know, double. Being vulnerable with yourself helps the youth show up and be vulnerable and help them. It helps them trust you, especially the teenagers and tweens. They need to trust you, right? And so you need to be an open book. So I usually share about myself and my skill, my profession, but also about my family. You know, I'm a mother, right? And my oldest is 14, my youngest is 5. I have pictures of them and, you know, I giggle about them and I talk about their families. Do they have families? Do they have siblings? Do you have a mom in the house? Do you have a dad in the house? And I have multi fathers in my family. Do you guys go to different, you know, and we create this place of I am your story and you are mine. Like we're here together. Um, and then I ask what their names are and anything that they would like to share about themselves or their family and their interests. And I write them down. I usually write down their interests. I take them seriously. I look them in the eyes. I say, put the computers down. This is a very important time. Um, and then yeah, I affirm them. I affirm their experience. I say, that's dope. You're so awesome. Always affirm them. Always affirm them because they are really needing that. We all need to be affirmed and say that we're awesome. Okay, period. But especially these young, especially if it's Black, brown, urban folk that are being overseen and being taught to hate themselves, we need to love them, right? Um, so I use eye contact. I repeat their name. I be sure to know that they are important. And I poll for art projects during this time too. Like, what kind of art forms do you like? So it's all very organic and it's a conversation. And some people, and then I'll spot out things that they may not know or do, have done before. And I see if they're interested. Like, would you be interested in painting? Would you be interested in printing shirts? Oh, yeah. And then we make some community agreements. I'll make sure I'm on point. And that's usually around how do you want us to, be in the space? We're going to be taking risks in this space. How can we be brave? How can we be a space where we're safe and we can try things and we not get criticized? Because being criticized makes it a place that's not safe for us to explore these new sides of ourselves. And so we all agree that we want to respect each other and our work and our spirit and our physical bodies. We agree that we want to have fun, take risks, and support one another. And we're like, well, how should we support another? Let's clap. Let's say, woo, and we ask, like, what does this look like? We need to respect each other. Well, what does that look like? So they can really be a part of creating the environment of the space, because the environment of these spaces could be pretty aggressive. Like, you walk in and there's detectors, like metal detectors, right? It's already a place of violence, like, or perceptive of that they're violent. So I'm saying, hey, in this space, in this time, we are creating a space where we are safe and we're vulnerable and we're trusted and all that stuff. So I really embed this community culture in all the lessons. I meet them where they are. Sometimes they're tired. They wake up at like 4 in the morning and 5 in the morning. I really try to see that they are humans. I always do emotional check-ins. How are we doing? Up, down, or, up, side, or down? Because where they are emotionally is important. And sometimes it's good for them to check in themselves so they give themselves some grace, right? Sometimes I'll do some breathing exercises if necessary. Sometimes, I teach them how to breathe properly with, like, expanding their diaphragm and all those things. Really, really having patience, don't waking anybody up. Oh, wake up, like, we don't want to create that environment. They might have had a whole, like, they have a newborn baby in the house. We just knew. So they're probably going to be tired sometimes, right? When I teach poetry, what's really cool is I usually start writing a poem with folks and answering and their thoughts of what poetry is, and we create a collective group poem. And so I try to demystify what poetry is if they feel like I'm not a poet, I'm not a poet. And then we create group poems together often. One person just sharing a line if it's a theme. And then all of a sudden we have this really cool group poem. Somebody says it out loud. It usually has a rhythm to it. And we usually start rapping to it. Any ways that we can kind of collectively create together is a way you can bring community also into the lessons. I also ask them, different questions on their interests. So let's say they're really into basketball players. So I'll bring basketball players to these lessons, right? We'll learn about Kyrie Irving. We'll learn about what did we learn? We learned about somebody the other day, and just their story was just such a sweet, you know, it was just so great to say this guy was actually like wanted to make robots and was drafted, and like now he has his own brand. He's making his own shoes and making his own clothes, and like, wow, we want to make our own clothes. We learn about the stories of these people that they think that just play basketball. Well, how did they get there? What do they do with their lives? What are their families like? And then all of a sudden they start to see themselves in that, and it's starting with their interests. So you really want to meet them where they are and like take them seriously instead of imposing something on them because they're going to reject you. They're going to reject it. And it just is what it is. So this is a student story. I'm almost done. This is a really cool story where uh, CB Community School was last year, and there's like at-risk school. This youth was on house arrest, which is such really sweet boys and ladies energies. And we were teaching about Gwendolyn Brooks, and Gwendolyn Brooks was in Chicago and has this really dope perspective of just like seeing the world. And they were watching these kids. She was watching these kids like leaving school and doing something at a juke joint, and she wrote this poem called We Real Cool. And a student of mine, Kyrie, wrote a beautiful poem about We Real Cool and was like, yo, I didn't know I was a poet. Oh my gosh, look, this is real nice. And this is a little picture of his poem. And he was so proud and he started memorizing it right there. He said, can I take this home? Can I rewrite? I was like, yeah. And then he also felt that same affiliation with photography and modeling. And so, again, seeing the light in people's these youth, see them light up based on the stories of these dope people that are part of their community. It's like connecting. So the last is how can we build community into the classroom is by seeing them as valuable and their story and their community and who they are as beautiful and connecting them to the greater community that's a part of their community, right? And knowing that we need to take care of each other. We also need to think outside of our own reality and we need to explore. And so how can we create that? And I think it originally starts with seeing the human in ourselves so we can see the human in each other. And that is my end. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Blue. That was beautiful testimony to your craft as a community builder and as a teaching artist, as an educator, as a mother. I think that one thing that we hope is reflected back to everything that Blue just said in our new mission statement is that wellness comes from being seen, wellness comes from being heard, wellness comes from being treated as if you are good and being treated as if you are being acknowledged and accepted, and not just accepted, but celebrated in the fullness of your humanity. And that's what Blue is doing in classrooms. And we hope that our new vision and mission statement reflect that art is essential. So I have the privilege now of introducing our featured speaker, Monique Liston. And so, without further ado, what happens when Black identity is loved, protected, and defended as we collectively learn about process and change in organizations and programs? This is the question that Dr. Monique Liston unapologetically built a community engaged, intellectual, and regenerative life practice around. She is the founder, chief strategist, and joyful militant at Ubuntu Research and Evaluation, an undisciplined learning organization that was awarded Milwaukee Business Journal's Diversity in Business Award. She also serves as the executive director of the Leadership Undercommons, an organization that protects and fulfills a sense of dignity for Black people through learning and leadership. She is a sought-after facilitator, speaker, evaluator, collaborator, and good time haver. Never forget that she went to school for many years, but is most proud to be an alum of Howard University. Proud Bison. Her awards include being a 2025 Milwaukee Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree, Public Allies first and only honorary alumni, and HBCU Alumni United Milwaukee Alumni of the Year. While she is not a self-identified poet, she published a book of poetry titled Fractals in 2025. As a daughter of Ursula, granddaughter of Gracie J. and Bernice, pet mom of Simone, a mini golden doodle, and Franklin, a Russian box tortoise, she asks that you send her recommendations of bookstores, restaurants, and beaches to help her find joy while surviving the end of a white supremacist, heteropatriarchal, queerphobic world. I'm so pleased that Dr. Liston is here with us today to share her experiences building beloved community and to help us to learn more about what it means to live into beloved community as a daily practice. Thank you so much for being with us, Monique.
Absolutely. Oh, great. Great to see everybody. Hey, family. It's Philly family in the building. There's Milwaukee family in the building. I see folks East Coast, West Coast. I see across the border. I see folks from Canada. We are in the building today. I am just so thrilled to be here. And thank you, Artwell, for letting me be a part of your celebration today, celebrating that release of a new or not even new, right? It's a revitalized, a regenerated mission or vision for the organizations. Because 25 years of work is no small thing. 25 years of community engagement, 25 years of supporting young people, 25 years of a space that artists are actually coming to is something serious. So, congratulations, Artwell, for all that you've been able to achieve and looking forward to the next 25 years, right? And soon, I'm sure we're looking to a future where a young person who's gone through Artwell will be leading the organization in the future. And so we are excited. But we're only going to make that possible, all of us, if we create the beloved community of which that young person can flourish in. So we're responsible for that. that vision, that vision that a young person who was sitting in blues class, learning and being activated and doing the meditation and the breath work and reading Gwendolyn Brooks and connecting to self and history, that young person, in order for them to one day sit in Malia's seat, we need to be the community that can activate them. Now, I didn't mean to start preaching. That wasn't where I was even going, but here we go. Here we go. So excited again to have an opportunity to talk to y'all today. Out of all the days, as we know that February is important. February is especially important in 2026 as we're celebrating 100 years of Black History Month. And so I'm bringing in some voices, some ancestral voices to ground this conversation because I think it's important that we understand that all history is a current event. All history is a current event, quoting the late, great Dr. John Henrik Clarke. And Woodson, who was pictured here on the left, who started Negro History Week in 1926, picked a particular week in February because of the birthdays of Frederick Douglass, centering what was happening. There's all this other stuff. There's other people who were born, but that's not what it's about. It's about those folks that were really about Black liberation and Black freedom. But it got expanded to Negro History Month, and we now know it as Black History Month. But one thing that I think people forget about Carter G. Woodson is that he did not play. He did not play. And what all of this work that he did around Negro History Week and Negro History Bulletin was for the educators. That's who he was talking to. He was not talking to the scholastic historians. He was not talking, he was talking to the educators, the people who were dealing with young people every day. And he created the Negro History Bulletin because he said we needed a space where we could understand and know Black history. And we have Negro History Week, not as the week that we focus on Black history, but as a celebration for what we've been doing all year. We come to February to celebrate because we've done the work. And he wrote an article, which is one of my favorites, entitled No Study, No Celebration. And he was telling the teachers that were subscribed to the Negro History Bulletin that you shouldn't be celebrating Negro History Week if you haven't been teaching Negro history in your classrooms year round. And I bring that into this conversation today because there's this man next to Carter G. Woodson up here that we know as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and he popularized this idea of the beloved community. We came to know it as he sat with many scholars who were theologians. And as he was at Boston College with who we also know as the late great Howard Thurman, he was like, the beloved community, that's what we should be striving for. That's what we should be doing. But I'm bringing you up today in the same spirit that Woodson brought up Negro History Week. No study, no celebration, no celebrating community work if we're not actually doing the work of building community. So that is what our charge is, because we know that the future of Artwell depends on us being the beloved community. So we go forward with the question that's got grounding this whole conversation is, why do we need the beloved community in the arts? And I get to shout out my dear friend, my dear sister, my dear cousin, Symphony Swanzawadi, who also is on the call, founder of the Creative House, because she said artists can help solve complex problems. So we're creating the beloved community because we know that if we're talking about all of these problems that are happening in the world, all of the limitations, all of the frustrations, well, you know what? We probably haven't brought enough artists into the room. We haven't brought enough artists into the conversation. And if we, as a part of this Artwell community, are not giving young people the tools to understand their artistic selves, they can't be the ones to help us solve the complex problems. And so right now, we're thinking about this question: why do we need beloved community in the arts? Because the artists can help us solve complex problems, but we'll only do that if they have the space that's curated for them to become the artists they were destined to be. And so we got to do that work to make sure we're in community. Now, one of my favorite things is words. I love words. And the when Malia reached out about this talk, we centered on the idea of building the beloved community. And I really appreciated the idea of building, because the image and conversation that came to my mind was about a brick. And if you walked outside of your house and a brick was sitting in the middle of your yard, and you asked me, what's this brick doing here? And I turned around and I said, that's a school. You would be like, huh? That's a brick. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's a school. And then you were like, oh, you're building a school. I get it. You're building a school. That's because there's one brick. But I start laying more bricks. Now there's 10, now there's 20, now there's hundreds of bricks. All of a sudden there's walls. All of a sudden there's a roof. And you come out and you say, what are you doing? And I said, this is a school. And then you're going to be like, well, I can for sure say it's a building. And I think it's important to say that, to put those things together, because in order for anything to exist in this space, we have to make sure that the building is something that we do, so that the building is something that can actually become. The building is something that we have to do so that the building can actually become. Beloved community is both the practice and the outcome. It is both the practice and the outcome. And in this case, when we're thinking deeply about Artwell's work, it is both the mission and the vision. We have to do the work with one another to be the beloved community, so that the beloved community can exist. It is both the verb and the noun. It is both what we are saying that we're going to do to relate to one another, while we're aiming for a future where we all are in collective liberation. Beloved community is both the practice and the outcome. It is our mission and our vision. There's a couple other wisdom teachers who contributed to me thinking about this conversation. Sebayit is the word that you see in the top left-hand corner there. And Sebayit is a way of expressing in English letters ancient hieroglyphics. But the translation of Sebayit means wisdom teachings, wisdom instructions. These are left by our elders, our ancestors, about concerning things that allow us to understand how we should move. And so here in this conversation, I'm taking some of my favorite wisdom instructions and putting them together to think about, how do we actually do the practice of building the beloved community so that the beloved community can be built. And you have on the far left here, or left on my screen, Tony K. Bambara. And she said so many things. Okay, I'm gonna just say, as a prescription to all of us, go do a deep dive on Tony K. Bambara. Her life was cut short, but you know why? It was cut short because the universe said she can't give you too much heat. She gave us so much. She gave us so much in a really short life. But in her interview, an interview that was done with her in the 80s, she said the job of the artist is to make revolution irresistible. To make revolution irresistible, to make the idea that the world can be better something that people cannot refuse. So if we're saying that artists can help solve complex problems, artists also have the job of making sure that everyone's compelled to engage the complex problems. That's part of the artist's role, the artist's job. Then you have Baldwin here, the my favorite. I'm a Baldwinite through and through. And James Baldwin's birthday is August 2nd. Mine is August 13th. We have big Leo energy. Okay, we connect. But Baldwin told us that the role of the artist is one to illuminate the dark, to be able to say, well, we haven't quite seen the full humanity, the full spectrum of how we can show up, the fullness of our love, the fullness of our gratitude. We haven't seen it. And Baldwin said, that's what artists do. So we got to support the artists. And then you got Toni Morrison, who comes into the conversation, who there's not a, I can't eat up everything that Toni has ever put a word next to. I just want it all. And Toni did a reflection on the artist and saying, I am a writer and I'm going to use language as my art medium. But not only am I using language, I do language. Remember, it's a practice and an outcome. She made words both a practice and an outcome. And so putting that together with, of course, not last but not least, we have Bell Hooks, who really took Dr. King's principles of beloved community and made them plain of what should we be doing with each other in thinking about the role of art, in thinking about building community. She wrote a ton of books in thinking about the way in which art can give representation to those who are most oppressed, particularly in the Black community. She had done some great work in thinking about in her own past just the power of art, being able to illuminate how she's able to move through the world. So these are our wisdom instructions. we sit with these people: Carter G. Woodson, MLK, Toni K. Bombard, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison, and Bell Hooks. How lucky are we? These are the people we get to learn from. And so we take all of that and think, well, so how do we actually build the beloved community, since we have to have the practice of it in order for it to exist? Well, I'm going to offer 9 practices. 9 practices of beloved community that we have to engage in order for the young people to be in the spaces to become the artists that we not just need, but deserve to make the world liberated as we know it should be. And these practices, we have to commit to, because they're about our relationships with one another. They're about how we show up at work. They're about how we show up with our family. They're about how we interact with the person who didn't plow our sidewalk and put a whole bunch of snow and my car can't get out. It's about the person who delivered my DoorDash but gave me the wrong order. It's about how we deal with the folks who bag our groceries and put our bread at the bottom. It's about the person who cut us off on traffic if you in Milwaukee while you on 94, if you in Philly while you driving on 76. I lived in both places, so I know. But it's about how we treat each other, how we relate to one another in all of those experiences. First practice, be radically open. And I know people are like, sure, radical openness, got it, done, doing it. But I want us to think about being radically open is taking the most strongly held beliefs that we have about being adults, about being raced, gendered, about being a part of your family, about having your professional role, taking the core of those ideas and saying, are we willing to question them? Are we willing to question those core ideas? Because sometimes, believe it or not, we're saying we're radically open, but our radical openness is only this deep. We're people this deep, but our radical openness is this deep. And don't ask us about anything below this line, because there's where we are closed. I'm open to all these ideas, right? I'll come with you. I'll eat the octopus. I'll get the tattoo. I'll get the piercing. I'll hang out, but don't ask me about my relationship with my brother. That's the end of my openness right there. And that does not build the beloved community. The beloved community asks us to those places we are most close, can we open them up? Be radically open to being questioned, critiqued, offered new information that may have us change our mind. That's practice number one. Be radically open. Number two, struggle with fear. Now, this picture of a dog is up here because in one of Bell Hook's explanations of beloved community, she says that a bunch of community members was like, Belle, she hates dogs. And Belle had to say, hold on, that's not true. I don't hate dogs. I have an irrational fear of them. Okay. I don't hate them. I do not hate them. And I need to work on that irrational fear. And I'm willing to be called out on that. I'm open to that reality. But I want to correct you. I don't hate them. And she uses that illustration because she's like, I know who hates who. I don't want to get caught up in that. There are folks out here who hate, and I'm not saying that's what this is. I am willing to struggle with fears because a lot of times we know that hate is wrapped up when people being fearful of things that are different than them. We know that. But instead of just saying, hey, stop hating, we really need to invite people to struggle with their own fears. Struggle with what you are afraid of. If we're creating the beloved community that these young artists can thrive in so they can create the world anew, the world that we deserve, the world where we're free, the world where we're liberated, we have to answer the question, when do I choose my fears so that I can maintain my comfort? Because the idea of reconciling my fear and learning something new is too uncomfortable. And so I'm going to avoid it at all costs. In order to build the beloved community, we got to say, nah, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of that new thing. I'm afraid of that position. I'm afraid of that person. I'm afraid of that conversation. And being able to say, nah, I can't stick in the comfort of just saying I'm afraid. I have to introduce to myself ways of being that allow me to struggle with that fear so I can get on the other side of it. Fears are temporary. They are not absolute. We can do work to do the struggle. Now, will it be easy? No. Will it be comfortable? Absolutely not. But they're temporary. We can do something about them. Next is embracing conflict. Now, I don't know how many of y'all have been keeping up with the saga of Elmo and Rocco. But if you don't know about Elmo and Rocco, Elmo really wants to hang out with his friend Zoe, and Zoe's always bringing around Rocco, and Elmo is like, I don't understand why you keep bringing Rocco because Rocco's a rock. We not rocks. And Elmo holds a lot of I'm angst, anger around the presence of Rocco. But I bring up the situation because what Elmo is attempting to do every time is like, I don't understand why Zoe keeps bringing this rock around me, but every single time I'm going to embrace the conflict and figure out how can we still play together. How can we still play together? I won't go through the whole video, but there's a lot of clips if you need some background on the drama. We talk about celebrity gossip, but I feel like this should rise up. Elmo and Rocco have been going at this for a couple years. So thinking about embracing conflict, we think about conflicts and disagreements as generative opportunities. Opportunities for us to do something different, learn something different, open our eyes. And as you can probably figure out, all of these practices are tied up with each other. They don't happen in isolation. You can't be radically open and not embrace conflict. You can't struggle with your fear and not be radically open. These things are wrapped up together. We'll keep going. We have a couple more. I want to make sure we open up to close out. We need to, I think we're at 4, grow equanimity. Thinking about being at balance. And the question that we have to ask ourselves here is, where do you seek power instead of being in balance? Where do you seek power instead of being in balance? And maybe even a better way to phrase it, where do you protect power dynamics instead of leveling them out? Putting yourself in a new position to say, I'm not going to allow you to hold power over me, and I'm not going to exercise power over you. I'm going to seek a new space of equanimity, a new space of balance between us. What types of relationships will we start creating in the workplace if we sought out balance first? If we create those opportunities in the way we work together, the classrooms that is going in would probably have a whole different feel if balance was sought out first. But that's why we have the artists, right? We need the artists to help us seek us out, give us the tools, the exercises, the mediums, the visuals to allow us to seek out balance. Next is seek redeeming qualities. The question here is how strong is your block game? The visual to bring up is thinking about the person, because all of us have them, despite whether we want to admit it or not, the person that annoys you the most on planet Earth. You ain't got to say their name, you ain't got to write it down, but you know who that person is. And think about having to get in a 16-hour road trip with that person today. Yeah. Yeah, that person. That person. In that moment, you would need to start seeking some redeeming qualities, okay? Something, that person got something good to give because you're about to be in this car together for the next 16 hours. That is the practice we need to be in with each other all the time, right? Seeing redemptive qualities in even some of the most questionable decisions that we see other people make, right? We're seeing the redeeming value, the redeeming qualities, and we got to even take it to the you annoy me, but you have gas money, so let's get in this car. Or you annoy me, but you also have a driver's license, so I can take a nap and you can drive, right? We have to start seeing redeeming qualities because we can't create the community that will actually nurture the young people because we're too busy not seeing value in each other. So how can we teach them to see value in all the world and in themselves if we've already created the spaces in which we have said we're devaluing everyone else, including ourselves? Almost done, almost done. So, oops. Aiming for reconciliation. Looking for the opportunity to reconcile. Even when you like, I don't ever want to speak to this person again. Now, I'm not saying reconcile and put yourself in harm's way. I'm saying if we're being the beloved community, that if person A and person B are in a situation where they feel like they can't reconcile, they're in community. So person C and person D can be a part of their reconciliation process. Can reconciling isn't just glossing over. Reconciling is just like, here's where we stand. Now we understand where we are. There's no question, there's no confusion. This is where we are. I see your humanity, you see mine, but we ain't got to be friends. And that's completely fair. That's completely fair. Be forgiving, be forgiving, be forgiving. And the gag is this is really about you, not forgiving anyone else. This is about forgiving you for that stuff on the inside that you still blame yourself for, that you still can't let go. And that's why the question is, what do you need to put down? The stuff that you haven't forgiven yourself for, put it down. Put it down. Forgive yourself. You're here. You're here. You're here. So, giving ourselves permission to start modeling forgiveness internally so that we can then model that forgiveness, not just, oh, I forgave you. That's not the struggle. The struggle is, can we do that self forgiveness so other people are in the space to forgive themselves as well? We talk about the environments that a lot of young people are in, but we've been talking about the environments young people have been in for decades. So now those young people and the environments that they've been in of self-hate and anti-blackness and queer phobia and transphobia and all of that stuff, those young people who are in the environments have grown up to not forgive themselves because they were taught either implicitly or directly that forgiving yourself is something that's not necessary. Keep moving. Do the symbolic work. We'll keep going. We about to log off. Love, be loving, be loving. Personal work. I'll be real vulnerable, honest, and transparent with you all right here in this moment. I grew up in a loving household. I grew up with loving parents and loving family, but it did take me a lot to really understand saying the words I love you to people. Just having the exercise of my jaw saying the words love you. And this question came up for me in the beloved community. Why is that so sticky for us? Why when people say love, people are like, whoa, you said you're talking to me? You love this? That's what does that mean? Why what's the withholding? Why does love got to be something so special and unavailable that we don't give it to everybody? We don't give it to everybody because of capitalism, but that's a whole different workshop. We'll talk about that later. Love. Last but not least, oops, moving towards liberation. Moving towards liberation, thinking about in all of our conversations, all the ways we interact with one another, all the ways that we see our own creativity, brilliance, and excellence. Are we seeking to get more free? Can we get more free than we are right now? And are we asking ourselves the question, when do you seek the comfort of oppression? Because sometimes oppression is comfortable, and it's comfortable because we're used to it. And getting free requires a little more work. And sometimes I get it, we're tired. So we seek the comfort of oppression. We tired, we exhausted. It requires work. But at least if we have this idea that we're in the community and all of us are moving towards liberation, when I get a little bit tired, you're there to help me keep going. These are the practices that we have to involve each other in order for the community to be what it needs to be for the artists that need to grow. In effect, beloved community is a practice of loving and forgiving one another, protecting and redeeming what is sacred in each of us, embracing conflict while seeking reconciliation, struggling honestly with fear, being radically open, moving steadily towards liberation, and growing in equanimity together. If we practice it, then we become it. I leave you all with this, that the practice of beloved community is essential for Artwell in order to fulfill its vision. And we, just by signing on this call, have become a part of it. So let this be a shared commitment from myself to you that I am excited to be a part of Artwell's beloved community. And I am thankful that each of you are too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liston. A beautiful reflection and a beautiful reminder of what it means to practice. I think that making the connection even deeper to Artwell's work is that our practice is in our approach, which is long term. We are showing up in classrooms every single week for 28 weeks throughout the school year. Some of our teaching artists at this point have had relationships with students in some of our schools for years, seeing kids grow from second grade all the way through fifth grade and building these really long and deep and meaningful and intentional relationships where students get the opportunity to practice the skills to reconcile with one another, to build the tools that they need to collaborate and to see each other and to build empathy. We know, and we have talked about in past learning sessions, that art making builds empathy. And that is neurological, that your brain is more wired to empathize and see your fellow human being by practicing art. And so we thank you so much, Dr. Liston, for all of those beautiful reminders and teachings, and again, grounding us in the ancestral work that has been done that we can keep going with. Um, I'm going to ask Dan to put the last slide up. We are closing out. And if there are reflections or questions, feel free to stay in touch with us. I will ask one of our team members to put our info at theartwell.org in the chat so that you can stay apprised of what's going on, and we can maybe send some information and responses back to you. And our last slide concludes with some of the things that are coming up. So again, in our 25-year anniversary celebration, We are having a social hour next month. April is National Poetry Month, and so we have a some key events and initiatives that are happening. One is our Artwell Social Hour, which more than likely will be at Tandoori Pizza, which is in the Fairmount neighborhood. We have Artwell Giving Day, which is our fourth annual Artwell Giving Day, which is our crowdfunding campaign to support the art show and all the work that we do in classrooms all over Philadelphia. That's on April 22nd. And that really relies on word of mouth and everyone just wrapping their arms around the organization to get the word out about our work and about our desire to raise funds to make the work possible. And then lastly, our poetry and art show is happening in May. More than likely, we're solidifying the date now at the very end of May. And because it's our 25-year anniversary, we are treating this like a class reunion. So we are hoping that all of our, beloveds come out, founding members of Artwell, members of our board, our teaching artists, donors, supporters, all come to the galleries at Moore College of Art and Design to help us celebrate all the work that has happened in classrooms this school year, but also the work ahead. So thank you all so much for tuning in today. Thank you to our speakers, Blue Kind, Dr. Monique Liston, for being here and sharing your time and your talent with us. We are all better for it. Thank you all. Please stay in touch. Take care, everyone.